This is That One Audition with Alyshia Ochse. I'm really excited about this because, wow, what a career you've had. But you've done such a climb to different landings. Like I always say when we were just talking about Anna and I teaching, is like there's a staircase analogy. Like, where are you going up the stairs? And I think a lot of people all of a sudden see you on Suits and they're like, oh my God, overnight success in the world, right? Not in the industry. And watching how somebody's climbed to get to that place and how many pitfalls before landing in a place where you get to be responsible for a character for that many seasons, right? We're kind of trying chipping away at that. But I'm so curious, from Toronto to LA. So it was always the thing to do acting, because you land here, you go to USC immediately.
That's right. Yeah. So, well, first of all, thank you for having me.
Oh my God.
I've said this offline, but I'm a huge fan, and mostly because, we just said this too, but I want to go on the record because I think what we do is so insane and so hard, and it can be very lonely and isolating. And I think what's magical about what you do with this podcast and with your work is like bringing people together and creating a community around things and creating conversation and helping people to feel like they have a place to turn to. So I just wanted to say thank you for doing that, because it is a true gift in an industry that could feel very isolating and terrifying.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just I'm like, who do I talk to? Who do I ask? And then when you hear people's journeys, you're like, oh, I can do that. Oh, I can survive that. Oh, I can stay in this, right? Like, you always glean from other people's experiences. And I feel like this is the one part of the business. The biggest part of our business is auditioning till you get to a certain point. But nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about it. It's like when we do press, it's like, well, tell us all about John Glenn and the right stuff. So then you're there. You're not really focusing on the bits and pieces.
Sure. The things that are helpful to people who are in the process, and hopefully interesting to people who might not know how this all works.
Totally. Nuts and bolts. So that's what I was like, oh gosh, I found it so fascinating. Like, I've always known you're from Canada, but I found it fascinating that you get to LA to then go back to Toronto and do a show, right? Like, what a full circle moment to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to know. So USC, you get down here. So were you starting to act in Toronto before that? Or you're like, we're going to go down?
Yeah. So I knew I wanted to be an actor from a very young age. I don't really know. I've had thoughts about why that was. I remember being struck like really young, like 7 or 8. I think I saw my first play. We were living in London, and so we'd go to the West End, and my parents weren't huge theater people, but they from time to time went. And so they'd taken, I don't even remember what the shows were, to be honest. I think there was like a Buddy Holly like retrospective or something. And I was just like taken away by it. Like, I had always loved film and television, but then I was like, wait a minute, I can be in this room and people are doing that there, and the sets are moving and the lights are changing and I'm feeling things and the audience is together. It just felt like a spiritual experience. It felt like church. It felt like, this is like where we can come to like all feel things together. And to a kid that I think felt isolated and kind of alone, it was just like a completely transformative experience. It's the same that I think for musicians have that same experience, like going to that concert that changes their life, or seeing live music, or the musician that they admire. It changed me. And I didn't know that it was a thing that was possible, or that I could make a life out of it, or whatever. I just knew like that. Whatever that is, I just want to see it. I want to consume it. I want to be a part of it. And as I got older and learned that it was a thing that one could do, which I think came not far after that, I think it was as I became a little bit older and started, learning, like, I think Michael J. Fox and Back to the Future, I don't know why, but I have a memory of like having a conversation with my father. And he was like, well, that's not like Marty McFly. That's somebody who's playing Marty McFly. And like, that's a job they do. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, like, you go, like, the job you do, that's their job.
You're like, that's an the responsibility that they have to do.
That's an option. Well, yes, I want to do that. I want to go and, go travel in time and skateboard and do the whole thing. Like, I want to have that experience. So it's from the moment I sort of figured out that it was a vocation, I was sort of obsessed with the idea of doing it. So I was very, very young, didn't know anything. But from that point on, my whole life was just this series of like, these people would come to our school to do a play for us or something, and then I'd be talking to them. I'd literally seek those actors out after in the hallway, and I'm talking like 7th grade or something. I'm like, how do you do this? Like, what did you do to get to do this? And they'd be like, well, I went to summer camp, or I volunteered to do it. I was like, okay, great. Okay. And I just started taking mental notes. And during the summer, I'd work at this place called Young People's Theater, and would just sort of like be a camp counselor there for every summer. And I just was like, there was just no other option. So I would do whatever I could do, to be engaged in it and to be learning. And in high school, that's when that really coalesced, because I met this teacher who I've talked about many times, and I will continue to talk about because she changed my whole life, Debbie Barton Moore. And she was running this incredible theater program in the middle of this school in Toronto, 2,000 person school, huge monolithic school, that you could easily just kind of get lost in. And she just had this like one corner of the second floor where she had these two rooms that were painted black and had carpets on the ground. And when you went into that room, you took your shoes off and you were just in that world. And it was like the safest, most beautiful, creative spot in high school, which is insecure and terrifying, and you're figuring out who you are. There was this spot of the school where you got to go be you and figure out who you were and what you wanted to say and how you wanted to express yourself. And that was it. I mean, as soon as I found that, I was like, well, I know for sure I'm going to do this now. I'm old enough to know that there's a path forward. And so just immersed myself in school, did play after play after play, writing plays.
And then got into USC. So then was USC like the way to go? Because I found it interesting that you said you were in London, so by way of Canada, that you didn't, especially with theater, want to go down to like NYU, would go more New York.
I wanted nothing more than to go to NYU. That was like, I auditioned for 2 schools in the States. Not a lot of people, a lot of people from Canada go to school in the States, but there weren't a ton of people in my graduating class who, for that, was an option. First of all, it's very expensive. And there weren't a lot of people exploring it. So I kind of took a run at 2 schools, which was USC and NYU. USC being the like, sure, like, I think that year it had been voted school of the year. I don't know why, but at that age, I had the understanding of myself that like transitions were difficult for me. And the idea of going and spending 4 years in a city that wasn't New York or LA, knowing that I'd have to go to one of those cities after, was like too much for me. So I was like, I'm going to New York or LA. And which school is it in both places? It's going to be NYU or USC. And USC for me was like, I'm not really going to go there. I'm going to NYU. I just want to have a second school because that's smart. And for sure, like New York was my city. There was no question that's where I belonged. Didn't get in. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And then I got into USC and I was like, I'm going to LA. And so like I arrived in LA with no interest to be in LA. I didn't want to be there. I didn't know the city. I didn't like the city. Mm-hmm. It was so far from home, which ended up, I think, being a good thing. But for me at the time was kind of crazy. And so, yeah, it was a total accident. I always imagined that New York was where I would end up.
What a happy accident, because then I'm so curious, the Jack Nicholson Award. Do you get that in your second to last year or your last year?
I have my memory. I think it was my last year. I think I got 2 awards in my last year. I got something called a David Duke Scholarship and a Jack Nicholson Award. And I think it's given to a senior.
So does that help kind of put things on the map? Because right after school, you started the Mark Taper, right? So you're going right into theater. Do you get an agent right away? Because I think a lot of people, they go to the conservatories, they're hoping to like right away get the manager, land the agent. Did you get the Jack Nicholson Award? And it's like, everybody was like, okay, Patrick, come be on our rosters. Like, that's what I imagined,
wish, right? I wish those awards had there was nobody who recognized what they were. I mean, I wish at that time that would mean anything, but certainly reps had no sense of what they were. I mean, really the way people out of school got recognized was being a part of that, oh God, what do you call it?
Showcase?
Yeah, the showcase. Yeah. And I missed my showcase. I dropped out of school or left school. I didn't drop out. I always intended to go back, but I left school because I got this opportunity to do a non-union film in Canada. And I was like, it was the lead of a film and it was non-union, but I was like, this is an amazing opportunity. And I would talk to the people at school and they were like, you can't do both. You're going to have to drop out or defer or whatever. And I thought, okay, I'll defer. I'll just do it. And so I left school missing my showcase. It was the last year of my senior year to go shoot this film that completely fell apart in 2 weeks. money ran out, checks bounced. It was like a total nightmare. And I was stuck in Alberta, and I had dropped out of school for this thing. So I was really depressed, but I had a certain amount of footage that was shot on film from this film.
From those
that was
2
all
weeks?
I had. I had like a few scenes that were shot on film. And I don't know that they were that good, but they were something. And in a world where I had nothing on camera but a few student films that I had done in school. So when I got back, everybody had already had their showcase moment. And my girlfriend at the time had gotten a manager working with her from the showcase. And I said, I have this like random footage. Could you possibly share it with your manager? I don't know what to do. Like, I feel like I've missed everything. And she said, yeah, sure. And lo and behold, he started representing me, and he was my manager for like 20 years.
No way.
Yeah.
Happy accidents. I mean,
Yeah, it was great.
I love when you can like pivot from side to side and you're like, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to NYU. No, I'm going to USC. I'm going to take this year off. I'm going to go do a film. Okay, I'm over here.
Man, my whole career has just been, I think if I'm kind of maybe like can own that I'm pretty good at something, it's go with the flow. It's like, okay, this is the direction we're going in. What's the best I can do with what we got right now, and keep going.
Okay, because I'm so glad, because that was going to be my question. So you get this manager, and you've got this background, even though you haven't finished USC, but you have training. People are starting to, at least in your world, right? Here's this award. You're doing great. Keep going. Like, here's some money to keep going. How is the audition process for you? Do you come out? Because it feels like, to me, as somebody looking at it, it's like, oh man, you graduate and you're hitting that quota that like every working actor wants to hit. 3 or 4 guest stars a year. Oh my gosh. A lot of people have to even work to get to that momentum.
Yeah.
So was the audition process pretty damn easy?
It's hard to remember this time, but I remember nothing was ever easy. It was terrifying, but I've always had this voice in my head that's like, run toward the fear, I guess. And so I would just, I would just go, and I would work as hard as possible. I was a really hard worker, and I tried to sync up, and I had this great manager who was, very, very positive and really held me aloft at a time when my insecurities were just biting at my heels. It's a really crazy time, that first kind of year in the industry, because, every rejection is just devastating. You haven't yet figured out how to like metabolize that kind of rejection. And so everything feels like, oh, my life's over. Like, this is a total sham. And you're not realizing that that's what this game is. It's just a constant putting yourself out there.
Yeah. I find it fascinating, even coaching and working with actors that are just starting, how every actor we take the rejection personally that first few years. And then eventually there's a tipping point.
Still do. I mean, I still have to remind, now I have a muscle that I can, like, if I get conscious and like really present, I can work it. But like, still, that's, if I'm not in my right mind, everything's personal.
So going on the personal route, because I do think it's hard to find an agent or manager to also support that development. And since you were able to keep that manager for 20 years, do you have some insight on how did that relationship work? When you got an audition and you were scared shitless, was it a relationship that you could pick up the phone and be like, I don't want to go in, I didn't do well? How are you communicating with your teammates at that?
This guy, Andy Corin, he was just such a champion. I just needed there was no question in his mind that I had whatever I needed to have. I've always been, while I've been very determined and I've worked hard, I've always had this like throbbing voice. Like, you don't have what it takes. You're not going to fit in. You don't belong, all that. And that's very real for me. And I think I got a number of times in my life, I've been really blessed to sync up with people who are the exact opposite. No question that you have what you need to have. Yeah. And that's not just about, telling me how great I am all the time. It's just like constant push. Like, don't worry about that. Focus on this, helping me to like reorient myself to what they see as more the reality, which is all of this is just a stepping stone. And he was that person for me at a very young age. It was just like, he taught me to say no to things, like right off the bat. Because there were a few things that kind of came up that were like, when you're starting, everything's an amazing opportunity. And he would be like, that's not what you want for yourself. That's going to lead down a road. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, you don't want to do that. I think the first thing I remember was like a Partridge Family reality TV, VH1 Partridge Family thing or something. And I just was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. That's like, there's no part of that feels like me. And he was like, then don't do it. And I feel like a lot of other people would have been like, I have to do anything I can, anything to earn money. And that's a totally valid way to do things. If you feel like you can do it, you push yourself, you learn new things. But I think he really taught me early on that I had value, and that part of having value is saying like, that doesn't resonate for me. I don't want to do that. And that's just a gift to a young actor who's feeling desperate.
I think that's a massive gift to be able to say, like, I love, Chikuti Awuji came on and he was like, we always forget to read that part in the line where it's like pending your interest. Like, if you're not interested,
I like that.
We as an audience member, we're going to see that you're not interested. The casting's going to see you're not interested.
Exactly. Something's got to like
vibing. Yeah. It's not, it feels like.
But I think right at the beginning of your career, that can feel like a luxury that you're not afforded yet. You can really feel like I can't say no to a thing, because who knows what the thing is going to be. And to have someone going, you're going to have plenty. It's not happening right now, but there's lots coming. So just calm down and work on the things that mean something to you. It gives perspective to somebody who has no perspective. And is quite frankly in just a ton of fear. You're walking around with a lot of like, I got to prove myself. I gotta win over everybody. I've got to be so good. There's so much pressure coming out of school and doing this, and so much competition. And he and other people in my life were just incredible forces for like, take a breath. Don't worry. It'll happen the way it's supposed to happen.
Okay. So then don't worry. It's going to happen the way it's supposed to happen. If I were you and you're starting off your career, this is 2003, 2004. You get to be an old school. I don't care if you're just a stand-in, right? Like, but you get to witness some of the comedic people, because Patrick, I have to tell you, I did not watch Suits when it was on. I've done a deep dive in the last week of watching Suits.
Oh, wow.
I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. You give me such a Robert Downey Jr. meets a Ben Stiller, where I'm like,
oh, wow, that's very kind of you.
How has he not been doing comedy his whole life? So when I did the research and went back, it felt like, oh, here's a track. Let's get into massive comedic films that were during that time when we're first beginning, huge. And we're getting little stepping stones into them. So I was curious if you wanted to lean more comedic. And then it was like films, you kind of started in this world. And then all of a sudden television just took you in to a more procedural, dramatic, great, thank you. I'll take the paycheck. But I was wondering what your experience was coming straight out of school doing,
Well, I mean, look, old school. That was my first time on a set. I had never. I was at USC, and they had sort of like a huge cattle call to find the Pledge Brothers of that fraternity, and they let like 50 students at USC jump to the front of the list, and so we just went in for this thing. I don't think I'd ever auditioned for a film, but I didn't know what was going on. It was a line out the door. I remember I was brutally sick that morning. I almost didn't go. And we went into and it was like 12 seconds in a room with Todd Phillips. It was just like he walked in and he like made an impression and walked out. And I don't know any better. I don't even know what an audition is. I mean, I've auditioned for school with like, a monologue from Cyrano de Bergerac. I've never done like these 4 lines from a page in a room. So I just go in and he looks at my resume really quick. And he goes, you can do a Scottish accent? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, all right, do it in a Scottish accent. And I was like, okay. And I did these like 5 lines that he had just written for the audition in a Scottish accent. He's like, oh, this is good. It was good. Okay, thanks. Bye. And gone. And I was like, okay, well, there's literally like 1,200 people at the door. Like, I don't know what that was, but it's fine. I'll go home. And then I got a call back, and we end up in this weird place in like Glendale, and we're being paired up with different groups of people to see kind of what this pledge. And I've never made a movie. I don't even know what we're doing. I don't know what this process is, but we're with a bunch of guys getting paired up to figure out who fits. I walk out of that. I go home for the Christmas holidays. And when I get back, at the time I had a different cell phone, so it didn't work up there. When I land back in Los Angeles, I have a phone. I have a bunch of voicemails saying, where are you? We need you for your fitting. And I was like, what? So I get back to LA and I'm calling them. I go, I don't know what you're talking about. They go, you start work on like next Monday. And I was like, what? They're like, yeah, it's going to be like 2 months of shooting and you need to be on set and starting next Monday. And we need this paperwork filled out right away. So, give me your social security
Yeah.
number. I'm Canadian. I can't work in this country. So now I have 24 hours to figure out how to legally go shoot this film. And of course, to me, this is like, I'm going to go shoot a movie with Will Ferrell. And
Are you
Vince Vaughn, like,
kidding?
what are you talking about? I have to do this, but it's totally illegal. I am not allowed to do it. I find in 24 hours, I find the only way to get there, which is to do an internship. I have to sign up for a course at USC, which is a working internship. And they do all this paperwork for me, like rush it in 8 hours. This woman at the immigration office or whatever at USC became like my best friend. She's like, we're going to figure this out. And anyway, in 24 hours, I end up signed up for a course, and I am doing the film Old School as an internship. And I have to go to class. I have to go to a class where everybody's doing internships, and we get to talk about our internship. So I'm there with people who are interning at the law firm and people who are interning at the accounting firm, and all people who are doing all this sort of normal work. And I'm coming in and going, I watched Will Ferrell wrestle in KY Jelly this week, and we dropped a cinder block attached to my genitals off a roof. And I'd have the end of that class would be people just around me go, what? And what did Will Ferrell do then? So it was a wild first experience.
Pivot experience. I love that all of your experiences thus far have not been like, I really want this, I'm going to do it, I'm going to get it. It's always been a comedy of
errors almost, or accidents.
Misdirect. Yeah.
But then always with that, like, I have to figure this out. Like, I have 24 hours to figure this out. And I think I'm good at, like, you put me in a crisis, I'm pretty good at, like, we're going to do that. I'm going to do that. I'm a Virgo. I like to organize. And so I'm really good when we have to, like, figure out how to make it work in a short period of time. So anyway, I get this experience on that set, and it was just a master class of, like, I didn't have anything really to do but stand in the background. There wasn't much acting to do, but I just had front row seats to the funniest people in the world doing what they do. I got to play guitar at Blues Funeral. I got to, so I had a little bit of like a moment. I had a thing that I had to prepare for and deal with the nerves and figure out what that was like. But mostly I just got to, like, be like, okay, who are those people? And they move the lights, and that's where we stand. And this is how you get ready for a take. It really felt like school.
It was an extension of school. You don't have to go back to USC.
It was an internship.
Finish. Yeah, it was a full process of an internship. Okay, Absolutely. So somebody who's a Virgo who loves to, like, to the last minute prepare. I just want, so the audience knows, from basically 2004 till you're on Suits, you are doing 3, 4, 5 television shows a year. Mm-hmm. So what was the secret sauce to your preparation, your script analysis? I've heard through the grapevine that your script analysis is bomb. Now, I'd
love to know how you hear that from the grapevine. That's good. Okay.
But I'm sure, like, we've worked to a process now of 20 years. Sure. So I'm curious at that beginning moment when you're earning more responsibility, right? As an actor, I like to look at it that way. So how are you, or what is that one audition of your procedural guest star land that is serving you, that, like, we just were talking about off mic? It's like, when you used to be able to go into a room, I would get the part sometimes, not doing the audition. I could tell that they wanted to work with me. There was something about me. We don't have that anymore, but you at least got to go in and have that buffer. You seem to me like somebody that, like, you've got that ease. So was it more the script analysis of a quick turnaround of an audition? You know what you're doing, or is it that ease of going into a room and kind of getting people, like you said, at the internship, now they're all crowding around wanting to hear you tell a story?
I think what was pivotal, it's so fun to think about this stuff because I hadn't thought about it in a long time. I think, first of all, I trained, right? I was in a Bachelor of Fine Arts program, which was such a blessing because I was immersed for 4 years doing 2 or 3 shows a year, running a theater company, writing plays, directing. I mean, I was just immersed. Yeah. And so contextually moving from that level of just 24/7 immersion with a huge community of artists and people who are all doing the same thing, and then you move into the industry right away, it's a huge change, but it's also like, I've just done, Garcia Lorca. Exactly. And now, so it's like, I can do this. I can do these 4 pages. I might not book it, but, like, I know I can do it, right? It's not cockiness or confidence. It's just like, I've had this experience. I've been up on stage. I've challenged myself. I've faced fears. I've fallen. I've failed. I've gotten back up. I've felt humiliated. I've had just a breadth of experience that I think a lot of people that show up into this industry might not have had yet. So that was great. I had also had the benefit before I really started working in television of doing that play at the Taper, doing the GOAT at the Taper, which for me was like a real paradigm shift. That was the first time where I was like, oh, I am like a working actor. I might have done like one guest star on television or something then. I think the first thing I did was a show called Strong Medicine or something. So I had that, but like that was like, oh, you're an actor. Like you are on stage. You're in one of the best theaters in Los Angeles. You're doing an Edward Albee play with some of the best actors you've ever met. Like,
and how did
this
you
is
land
happening.
that? Was that also an audition out of?
Oh my
I
God,
need
that's
to
a
know
great
this
story.
because also I was like 2003, 4, we get the Jack Nicholson Award. Now you're at the Taper. Now you're in Old School. I'm like, damn, I would be like, okay, I got this. Now I'm doing
well,
it.
they refused. So this was a funny story. I was an intern, again, Canadian, could not work in the States. And so I had the dean at the University of Southern California got me an internship, paid internship at the Mark Taper Forum at the Center Theater Group. And so I was working there all summer, and I was like the coffee guy. I was pushing around on the cart. At the time, the Kirk Douglas hadn't been built yet. So I was in charge of the model of the Kirk Douglas Theater, and I would move it around, and they'd be like, we need the model up on 2. And I'd push it in. Like I was a real intern. Like not creative position at all. And as a result, I knew everybody. I knew a lot of the people who were in charge at the Taper because it's a relatively small organization over there. So when the GOAT was happening and they were casting it, and my manager at the time said, you should see Patrick for this. They were like, Patrick, the intern? No, we're not. We're only like, this is for actors. We're the Mark Taper. So they refused for weeks. They refused to let me even audition. And in a way, I was relieved because that was so scary to me. I was in there cleaning up after the other actors in the rehearsal room half the time. Yeah. So the idea of making that transition, like I felt like an intern. I did not feel like an actor. And so on the one hand, my dreaming self was like, this is where you want to be. But the reality of being there was so scary to me that I was unsure of how much to really push for it. But again, this manager was like, you belong in that room. You belong in that room. You belong in that room. And finally, they hadn't found the guy. They had auditioned everyone they could think of. And they said, okay, let him audition. And so I went into that room. It was the best way to go into an audition. I didn't want the job. I was almost too scared to get the job. I just wanted to prove to these people that I was worthy of auditioning. I don't care. Don't give me the job. Right? In fact, please don't give me the job. This is going to be so scary to me. Just let me prove to you that like I'm worthy of being seen. That's all. Because the idea that you wouldn't see me is just sort of offensive. So I went in, guns blazing, really excited. I've come out of theater school. I know how to read a script. I know how to think deeply about it. I know how to make decisions. Like all this stuff I've learned. Let's go. Let's do it. I don't need to win it. Let's go. And it was one of those auditions where the moment I finished, there was just sort of this like staggered stillness afterwards. And they were just kind of like, it was the first time and maybe one of the few times I've ever experienced that at an audition where it was just so clear that this was all about to happen. And they were sort of speechless and they were like, okay, thank you. Great. They shepherded me out and I walked out of there, sort of out of body experience. I was like, what just happened? And lo and behold, I got the part. And I was, suddenly went from being the guy cleaning up the rehearsal room to being in the rehearsal room. And so all of that to say, I had, that transformation for me led me into, okay. And then I think I really didn't work for a long time after that too, which was very humbling. But I also was like, if I can do that, I can do anything. Like I can do these few scenes on Cold Case. Like I can do, it's still scary. I still feel like I don't know what I'm doing, but I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. So maybe it was about fear and it was about overcoming fear and self-doubt and insecurity that like put me in a position where going into those auditions with those casting directors for those first few gigs on television just felt like, I think I belong here. Like I'm humble. I don't think I know everything. And I certainly think I have a lot to learn, but I think I belong here. I think I can do this.
Absolutely. And I think that that's what, I mean, your recovery, I always call it recovery, is
Mhm.
really phenomenal. So I know you've talked a touch about this in the press, but I would love to then jump to Friends with Benefits
Yeah.
or any other pilot leading
No,
up
no,
to
no,
that,
no.
right?
That's the
Because
one.
this is everybody has to get to this point in their career. And I've been on this cutting block. Most people I've talked to have been on this cutting block, and how they
Oh God,
recover
getting
from
fired.
that.
Yeah, I mean, spoiler alert, I get fired from Friends with Benefits, but it is the greatest gift in a way that ever happened to me. It was the most painful thing that I'd ever experienced. I felt so humiliated and so scared and so sure that it was all over for me. And it ended up being the thing that opened all the doors. Like, so when the worst thing happens to you and you survive it, you're like, oh, wait a minute, that's not that.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, I'm way more resilient than I realized. Like, oh, this is not any, this is just one thing, in many, and certainly because I booked Suits 6 months after I think I
I
got
was going to
fired.
ask how much longer was it after? And I really want to, I would love, I don't like to really get too minute with people's pain, but just even
Get
going into
minute with my pen.
even like, well, because I think it's such like, we as actors, okay, Friends with Benefits. Oh my God. Again, me also, I'm going to put you on this comedy gold place. I can't wait to see you do
Well,
something
to be
like
honest,
that.
it's funny that this comedy thing is funny because Friends with Benefits is probably the reason I have not chased more of it. Friends
Oh,
with Benefits,
okay.
like it did something to me or my idea of like what I'm capable of comedy that I still have to kind of do some work on. Because that was a classic sitcom.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, from the minute I read it, I thought I had the exam. I don't think I should do this. I don't think this is very funny. I don't think I should do this. And it was one time when all the reps kind of gathered together and they said, this is good. And like, this is a big deal and you should want to do this. And it was one of the few times where I was like, okay, I guess I do. I want to work. And so I kind of went in reluctantly and I still did my job. I showed up and I did it. And the director really responded to me. And I was like, I really don't think I'm like the whole time I had this energy of like, I really don't think I'm right for this. Like, I don't actually know. And he kept bringing me in and bringing me in and bringing me in. And he had to do a fair amount of convincing because I didn't have any kind of credentials or comedy credentials. And I didn't have much experience in that realm, but he really fought for me. And then we get to the table read, that the read before you shoot,
Yes.
which I'd never experienced that. I'd
Yeah,
never
because
done
this
any
is
of
the
that.
big, this is the
This is like
big,
the big comedy network comedy pilot.
yeah.
This is how it's done. Like, and you better be funny and everybody better be funny. And so we get on this table in front of the hundreds of people from, I don't even remember who made it. If it was Warner Brothers, I think it was Warner Brothers or
The
Universal.
studios, the execs, all the suits. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And I'm in that room and it's terrifying and it's horrible. I do terribly. It's not funny because the script was, I didn't think the script was funny and I didn't know how to make it funny. And I didn't want to be, I'm an actor. I don't want to like go big, it was not the kind of actor I am. I didn't want to make everything huge. And so I made it smaller and it was really not funny. And anyway,
Trying on a little Bateman
disaster.
for size. You're like, I could
Oh,
Bateman this. Just Bateman it, right?
so bad. And then I get home and after that, and I get a phone call saying, all right, not good. They don't want you to do this. But the director's like, but I still believe in you and I want you to come in and we're going to shoot scenes. We're going to shoot them and we're going to show you. And I was like, man, listen, like, I really appreciate this, but we don't have to do please. And he was like, no. We're going to make this happen. You're the guy. I know you're the guy. We're going to do this. So they bring me onto the back lot. I think it was at Fox, and we're shooting scenes that are just auditions for me. They brought in the other actress. We're shooting scenes together, and it's the most pain. I mean, I'm on a set. They've got a video village. All the producers are around it. So I know they're talking about me, how good, like it was the most under a microscope I've ever been in my entire life for something I didn't even
You weren't
want,
feeling,
like I was like this, I don't care enough to be going through this, but now I have to, like, now we're playing the game. And lo and behold, I got on a plane to go to New York. I saw a view from a bridge. I remember I got out. I was with Troy and my wife now, and my girlfriend at the time, and I got like 20 messages on my phone. And I went, uh-oh, and I turned it on, and we're so sorry.
yeah.
It's not going to work out. And I thought my world was over. I thought, and it was so weird because I didn't like this job. By the way, everyone ended up getting fired from this job. Fran Kranz was on this show, got fired from the job. The writers got fired from the job. Everyone got fired
Everybody
because it
did.
wasn't funny.
Wasn't
and this
working.
studio, they want to blame, whatever.
Yep.
So, the point being, though, that for me at that moment, complete devastation. This is me. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. It was a reinforcement of every fear and insecurity I had in the business. And then 2 weeks later, I was okay.
Okay, so talk to me about recovery, because then here comes Suits. And then I did a deep dive on casting people that you'd worked with. I wanted to, when you read Suits, because when you get a part, there's certain times when I read something, I'm like, okay, let's go do this. Like I know it's going to be my responsibility to bring it. Every once in a while in the 20 years, there's been a couple of times where that maybe I still believe that was the right fit, but you got other people playing and it doesn't end up working. Right. And those are the biggest, I think, heartbreaks. What was your initial thoughts when you read Suits?
I was in such a shattered, but like really kind of cool place after that firing, in that I wasn't dead. Like the thing that I thought would kill me, like didn't kill me. I wasn't yet like I filled with now this renewed confidence or whatever, but I was like, oh, weird. I'm still here. I still like to do this, and like everything's going to be okay. And I got this script about a young guy who has found himself in a position, a young, really brilliant, hardworking guy who knows that he's got what it takes to be great and do the thing that he loves. And he just needs to convince the right person to really give him the shot. And I was like, I got it. Like all I have to do, it just lined up so perfectly with where I was at. I was like, you're telling me I get to just, for an audition, I'm going to go first. I mean, and I can't even remember how many auditions there were, but the same audition, callback, producers, test, studio test, network test, all the things. And for every one of those, I was just like, I just get to go in and look at more and more powerful people down the chain and go, just let me do this. Like, trust me. I know, like if you, and that's the character, that was the scene, it's him with Harvey in the office. Like, if you just give me a shot, you're going to see it. It's that scene that is like, that is the scene from the pilot, which is like, if you just let me do this, I guarantee you'll see, I know what I'm doing. I won't necessarily be in that scene, he's very cocky. I'm going to be the best. The best for me, it was just like, goes back to that same audition I had at the taper. Just let me, I promise you, I'm going to work harder than anybody. I'm going to show up, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to care about this, and I'm going to bring as much to it as I possibly can. I will make this everything to make this work. That's how much it means to me. And I just had an opportunity to say that to more and more and more executives. And it didn't feel like an audition. It felt like a confessional, or it felt like like it suddenly wasn't an audition anymore. It was just like me telling you exactly how I felt, just using the words of the script. And it was the most effortless process from beginning to end. I remember it was just like, yep, I know this.
Did you guys have chemistry? Did you have to do chemistry? Why am I blanking on the lead's name right now?
Gabriel and I did not. No, which was shocking. No, they didn't. I couldn't believe it. The first time I met Gabriel, we went out for lunch in Beverly Hills somewhere. They had cast us both independently. I don't remember why. I was cast first, and I think they really wanted Gabriel, and I don't know if Gabriel was like, he just wanted to like talk to them. I don't know. I don't know what it was. I don't know why they wouldn't have paired us up, but they didn't pair us up. And it was shocking because it totally works. I mean, I love that guy. Beautiful. And right from the beginning, we were just like fell into that place. So that's just luck of the draw.
And then
great casting. I mean, credit to Bonnie Zane and all those folks for, I think, you always have to give credit to all the people that cast a show. Absolutely. Because I think they know you're going to get along with that guy. You're going to get along with that guy. And
I wanted to ask, because Bonnie hadn't cast you in anything else, doesn't mean that you hadn't met her 1,000 times. And I think a lot of actors need to hear how many times you go into, had you met Bonnie before that Suits audition?
I have terrible memory, but I must have. Yes. Okay. I mean, I think it's hard for me to actually remember, and it's something I'm trying to be better at. And your show did it to me, because everybody's talking about these amazing relationships they have with casting directors. And I'm like, I think I'm in such a fear state, or so like fear or whatever, an out of body state in so many auditions, that like I had a hard time constructing that like relationship with them. It was such a like out of body experience that like I don't remember how many times I've seen these people. And sometimes I don't remember having been in front of some of these people. So I'm trying to get better about doing that.
It's such a even though it's not your auditions are not, but it's such a performative based thing. You know, I don't know if you played sports, but it's like, you know, gearing yourself up for the actual game. When you're playing the game, you don't hear the audience. You don't hear
in a perfect world, Yeah.
Lasered
Yes.
in. So I'm not surprised. I have
Yeah.
the same thing too. I just think once you start to piecemeal things together, you can see how a seed planted 10 years prior pays off. And it just might take a really long time.
And I think the crazy benefit, or one of the things that happens, it's not, this part's not a benefit, but I was on a show for 7 years, and that was the time I was just out of the game. So there's also a huge chunk of my career where I was sort of auditioning stuff in between seasons, but not a lot, and certainly not a lot of television. And so I just think there was this huge period of time where whatever relationships I had found or started to create in those early years of my career were put on pause, essentially. And then there was me coming out of Suits and kind of taking a hiatus and a break, and then sort of reintroducing myself to some of these people and meeting some of the newer people doing it. So there's sort of different chapters of my career. On one of them, it was very, all quiet on the Western Front, sort of.
Well, I find that fascinating. That was going to be my question. Well, before we get to that point. So I did this amazing thing where I watched the whole first season of Suits in the last week.
Oh my God. No way. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, it's so good. I'm sorry. Like it's just,
I've never watched it.
Well, I want to tell you, because then I did something else where I went and I watched the pilot, and then I watched the last episode. Because
cool.
as somebody who has been working well, like you really have gone up that ladder. Okay. I'm going to get more responsibility here. I'm going to get more responsibility here. Now, as an actor who now steps on and has the responsibility for 7 years, it's a different muscle that's happening. And watching your muscle get bigger, stronger, more confident, as does the characters too, right?
Sure.
So but watching you from the pilot to the end episode, I never saw any fear. And I'm curious.
So amazing to hear you say that, because I feel like my whole career is there's such a throbbing fear behind every single part of it.
Well, the thing, did you see Kiss Kiss Bang Bang with Robert Downey Jr.?
Yeah, of course. Yep.
You know the scene where you kind of in the pilot come running in, and it's almost an homage to Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, where it's like he comes in and instead of it being an interview, he's like sits down and has to do the interview. I mean, that's what gave me the Robert Downey Jr. thing. But you did things in the pilot that I think as an actor, we're always so focused on the lines or how we're coming across, but just your nonverbal attention to detail and your character development was so brilliant from the pilot even onward. So I was curious in that, what did you learn as a responsibility as an actor, from script analysis to just developing a whole different muscle than auditioning, right? Which might lend itself to your theater training, where you're with a character for a very long time, but you're on the same piece. I was wondering what kind of things you brought out of that.
I was really like when I go back to the pilot of Suits, I was so excited, and I was just like, I was like, I want to do anything I can for any moment whatsoever. Like everything means something. I want to do the most. I just remember wanting to do the most with everything, and also being aware that can make you do too much with too much.
Exactly.
But like I was like, what is this moment? How do we make it special? How do we make what else? Like there was just no stone unturned kind of mentality throughout that whole thing that I think was not just me. It was the producers. It was our showrunner, Aaron, who had never run a show before. So he was filled with enthusiasm and excitement. There was a sense of collaboration on that set. There was like what is the thing that will make us all laugh? Like, did that work? Can we get to the place where this all works? And there was like no ego about it. It was like, did that work? No, let's try something different. There was just sort of like this like fearlessness and this joy that I felt like I had earned, or because I'd been through kind of a lot at that point. But I remember that was basically the whole first season for me. It was just like, I have never worked so hard on a thing in my entire life that first season. I dedicated every ounce of my energy.
It shows so beautifully. Even down, there was one of my favorite moments in the pilot. You fixed your sock while running across the street. I don't know if you remember doing that. But
I don't remember that. No.
Made me stop and think, oh, you filled in every moment. That every moment was so amazing. So I want to know, okay, because we get to this mountaintop in our careers of responsibility. Now you've had this responsibility for 7 years. And like you said, what you deem is like, oh, I've kind of gone quiet, all quiet on the Western Front with all casting directors. But no, you haven't. Now they know, they can see a body of work and they have an assumption now of who you are as an actor. So I was curious, coming back into the audition process, or maybe you don't have to at this point. And if so,
oh no, I still do. I mean, look, I'm lucky enough that there are certain things that I find get offered or come my way, but most of the time I find that those things are only things that are exactly like everything you've done before. And if you actually want to do anything different and really push yourself, you have to audition for it. And you want to audition for it. You want to be like, I want you to see what I'm doing and tell me that that's what you want to work with. But I came out of Suits. I would say I was in a pretty dark place, to be honest. The first season was, I'm going to give it everything. Second season was, wow, I am not going to be able to keep this pace. I can't sustain this. Third season was, oh man, this is actually going to be a really long time, I think. Fourth, it sort of became, and not to say I became lazier, but you also are like, any show becomes a little repetitive. And I suddenly felt like in the first season, I was this sports car that was like, I want to go 1,000 miles an hour every minute. Where are we going? What are we doing? We can do more and do more and do more. That is just not sustainable. And when the time you get to the fourth or fifth season of a show, you've got to be a little bit more in autopilot, a little bit. Not to say you're lazy. You just need to you're running a marathon now. You're not sprinting, you're running a marathon. Yeah. And I did not know how to run a marathon. And it really took a lot out of me. It made me very sad. I hated that I wasn't that same actor I was in the first season. So for a lot of different reasons, I came out the end of that just feeling like I hadn't done it right, or I didn't know how to transition from that to the next thing. I was just really I was very, very lost. I didn't know what steps to take next. And so I didn't. I really just stopped for a while and just kind of got really quiet. Yeah. Spent a lot of time with, again, Troyan and I were together that entire time. So I was in a long distance relationship that entire time. So we enjoyed each other's company and we got to be together. But I think I also just had a fair amount of if that's what it's like, I don't know that I have that. I don't know that I can do that again. And I don't know what else there is. And all anybody wants from me now is more of that.
Is more of that and not the
and I can't do that again. I know I can't do that again now, at least. I can't go and do that again. So I just sort of stopped for a while and was so blessed and lucky to have had those 7 years so I could afford to sort of get quiet and figure out, what do I want? Who am I? What am I doing? And what do I want this next part of my career to look like? Which, I'm still figuring out in somebody. I'm still, my whole next part of my career is, the post-Suits career. But
well, so that's my question, because, okay, so you have to go back into auditioning for things that you want to, again, have to prove that I'm an actor. I'm not Suits. I'm not this. So what is your approach now to auditions or to new opportunities that feels fresh? Because also when somebody's been doing it for a while, there is a mental aspect to this, the recovery process, that now your body, it's like a bike, that there's going to be a cycle to this. There's going to be highs and lows. There's going to be moments where you don't feel so great, but that you can get on the bike and you're going to be able to ride it. I'm curious if it's changed your audition process or how you found that inspiration again, if there's a technique, if something tangible, or are you kind of shocking the system? I mean, we've both done Nancy Banks' class, but then every once in a while, I feel like I have to go shock my system, a new way of approaching the work so that I get that eager beaver mentality. So I'm curious if if you found yourself in any.
I think my shocks to the system come from, and I don't know if this is kind of what you mean, but they come from like outside the acting world now. Like, and I find, there's other things in my life and I need to kind of go fill up, especially
Yes.
now I have kids now. So it's like a whole different thing, but like learning very deeply, like, oh, I need to like live in the world to have something to report back with. I can't make my whole life, acting. That was what I did when I was young, because it was like, I'm going after this thing whole hog. I'm going to surround myself. I'm going to watch every movie in the world. I'm going to study every actor. I'm going to have like every experience that I can. Now I'm a little bit more like, I need to go have experiences, and I need to have adventures, and I need to travel, and I need to meet people, and I need to have, experiences that I can then sort of, that remind me of my humanity, that remind me of like what I'm here to do, that remind me of what stories I'm interested in telling and what characters resonate with me. And I can feel when that's drained out of me, when I've just been in the grind, when I've just been in the like looking for the next job. And as soon as I recognize that, I'm like, nope, we got to stop. That's not what this is. Now I'm just waiting for the phone to ring, or waiting for the email to come in, or the appointment to come in, or, or doing that thing that we can do, which is like, what short film do I need to make? What story do I need to tell? Which is a totally fine instinct, but I want that to come from like a place of passion and curiosity. I'm like, oh, I have to tell that story. This is the story, rather than what's going to get me where.
Yeah.
As soon as I'm in that place, I know I'm like dead to rights and I need to stop
and start all over.
But I want to say something. It's almost an admission, because like, I can't remember exactly how you just put it, but like your process or where you're at with auditioning. And I guess I want to say, like, I'm not in a good place with it. And we were talking a bit about it before. And I want to say that because, I think sometimes you just want to make everything sound great and it's all going well. And boy, have I really figured out this audition thing and this whole self-tape reality, which I was so excited about. At the first, because I have struggled with a lot of fear and a lot of insecurity. And as I've gotten older, that anxiety has gotten worse in some ways. And I've had to really figure out some solutions to work with it. But being in a room, especially also after taking 7 years away from it, it became harder and harder and harder. So it was a gift, the idea like, oh, I'll be at home and I'll get to control my environment and do the takes that I want to do. But I have found that operating in that bubble and not getting feedback and not feeling connected to a human being and not having a note and getting to try it and not, again, get the part or not getting the part, but just getting the feedback of like, he did great. We're super excited to see him for another thing, or being in relationship of, rather than just being presentational, which is what I feel like now. I'm just presenting like an idea of a thing that I have, and I'm sort of in a dark room and I send it off to another dark room and you never hear anything. I'm finding that to be a really not rewarding process.
It's laborious, and there's no validation loop closure.
Yeah, it's more that like I can do labor. Like give me work. I love work. I love to work. I love getting to put in the effort and go the extra mile. I don't mind that. It's just that it's to have it exist in a void. And to not have that same feeling you used to have when you drive across town and get into a room and go, there's no time wasted here. If I've done my work and I'm showing up, I've not wasted a minute. It doesn't matter you get it or not. I've gotten to be an actor. I've made an impression. I've showed you that I like to be prepared. I've had an opportunity to face my fears and insecurities, get over it. Like, it's all good. It's all movement forward. I don't feel that way with self-tapes. I feel like
it's a totally different game, right? Where it's like you're going to a game. Like, I feel like you're going to that performance, right? Even though you're not performing when you're in the room, but you're going to showcase. Whereas, when you make a tape, now there's no collaboration. There's no feedback. It's
all just this idea I have of a scene that I've prepared, that I've also had to find someone else to come and give me the time in the day. So I feel a little bad about that. Oh my God, this person's coming and made the time. Like, there's lots of pros about it. There's lots of things that I am grateful that there's opportunity for other people, that there's now, if I can't be in town, that there's the way for that to happen. And it's not an inconvenience for the casting director, but I do feel like I've lost that sense that the work, it pays off. Like, you either get the part or you don't. And I'm not someone like, I don't watch anything I do. I don't like that. I've never considered that to be my job. I'm envious of actors that can do it, who can be objective about their performance, who can watch it and who can dial it in and go, it's a little too much to me. That I know that for me, the minute I see myself on camera, I'm not seeing what is really going on. I'm seeing a completely different thing, and that hasn't served me well. It hasn't been good for my mood or my depression. So I've just realized that's not for me. I don't need to do that. It doesn't keep me in the positive place. I have to do that now.
That's what I was just gonna say.
I have to do it.
Self-tapes, you have
yeah. So now I have to. So now, which is, again, silver lining, maybe good. I got to learn. I got to learn to be more comfortable with that part of the process. I need to own that more. I need to see my strengths. But it's not what I got into this for. I like to be in a room because it was like, here's what I do. Does it work? And then people go like, no, that doesn't work. And I'll be like, okay, I'll go away. Why didn't that work? Next time, does this work? Yeah, that works. Great. Let's do that. And I could kind of avoid the product of it and just be in the process. And now with these tapes, it's all product. And I find that very, very frustrating. And honestly, it hasn't been incredibly successful. I've had a lot of amazing opportunities and done a lot of great things over the last few years. None of them have come to me by tape.
By tape.
Zero. Yeah.
Well, thanks for being honest about that, because I do think it is at different levels. I think that everybody's feeling that pain of not having the ethers connect with another human being. And that's what I think that's to me is the hardest part, is even if you're doing a Zoom chemistry, even if they're all sitting there on a Zoom, it's really hard to do the chemistry.
I had my first audition the other day on Zoom. Like, it was just a Zoom like this audition though. And it was like, even that was like fresh air. I was like, this is great. I mean, it sucks. It's in a screen. I'd rather be in a room and talking to people, and sure, but here we are. You're watching me. You give me a great, but I need you to do this. Oh, great. I love it. Let's do that. Change it up. Be in conversation with somebody.
The conversation, I think, that we're all really, really missing, and trying to figure out how to have that conversation with you and a phone, and maybe your reader's there, or maybe your reader's not there. It's
and what I find disheartening, and I want to create more of a dialogue between casting directors and actors, because I do get the impression casting directors really like this. They love it, and they're into it, and I can see why. But I have to imagine that they also see that there's something lost here, and that there's some part of the process that was really quite special and important is not happening anymore.
Yes, I'm curious to see after, like, how it's all going to be regulated in the next couple of years, or if we'll find our way back into a zone where we're going in the room and having that
balance, or just balance. Like, yes, you can do that if you need to do that, if that's going to work for you. But if you can be here at this time, I don't know. I mean, there's much smarter people than I working on this and that have more of the information, but it doesn't feel to me like a super sustainable way.
Yeah, it's hard. It's a much harder way to like leave that audition alone. Like you could go in the room, like you said, have that communication with somebody else, whether or not it goes in your direction, or it doesn't matter. You can leave feeling like, I did my job. I did what I needed to do. There'll be another one. It's a little easier to let that audition go versus when you send it out in the ethers, there's no, did I do that? Did I do this? I almost have to give myself check marks where I want to try and do this. Did I do that? Okay, well then I'm going to send it. Like, all right, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
We'll see.
But not having like someone there to help you arbitrate that process, where you're just in a room and it's like, yes, it's important that I have as accurate feedback about how something goes as possible, but it's too personal. I'm in it. I don't know. I need someone to push. I need to be pushed. I need to be,
You're like most coachable. Yes, you have
go further, get bigger, go further. Don't be afraid.
Okay, because I did hear this great rumor of your script analysis just being dynamite, and I do ask a lot of people, when you do get an audition now, besides reading it, what are some ways that you're tackling your technique, or what is it that you're kind of fancying and loving that you're exploring right now to help you get into the world, into the character? What's the couple things?
Well, again, so much of this sort of happens without thought anymore, but there is just a dedicated couple of reads, right? And just the way that I read, I think, has changed over the years. So there's just a diving into the text. What I don't understand that. What questions do I have? A lot of research, a lot of time on YouTube if it's something that I don't really understand. Just a lot of connecting the dots and doing the dorky research of things. But what I'm finding now, I started working with Kim Gillingham a little bit, who does a lot of the dream work, which has been pretty transformative to me. I think I came out of Suits unsure of kind of what this job meant to me. What's the point? How is it sustainable over a long period of time? And really, what is it? Like, this is an art form. And it's very easy for me and my brain to turn it into want to be a business. Business is manageable. Business is checklists. Business is to-do lists and just do this, do this, do this. And I think a lot of my prep in my life and my work has been that. Just do this, 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 and this, you'll get a result. And what I need to foster more, and I'm trying to do more, even if it's auditions, is a little bit more of this softer, unconscious, what is resonating, what about this is speaking to me, what if this is what something I want to work on, whether it's a job or it's just in class or something that I'm just memorizing while I like walk around Griffith Park. Like, what is it that wants to come through me, and why is that wanting to come through me now, and what is happening in my experience in my life that I'm someone that feels like I can give something to this. And that just makes it everything feel more personal to me. And now I'm at a point where I can't really do work unless even the seeds of that have been planted somewhere. Like, it's not enough now to just check the list. I know when I'm checking, and I do it still. I catch myself doing it all the time. Where you're like, you're just filling out, you're just checking things off your to-do list today as an actor. And you know what? You can do it. You're good enough now that you can get away with doing it, but it's not rewarding. And I don't think it's why I really got into this. And it's not the kind of thing that, this is a gift to be able to do this. It transforms your life. Like, it's medication. This is like, like any great art form, I think you really commit to it and it could really change you. You can find yourself a different person at the ending of any given job if you allow it to like teach you something.
So with the dream work, because I work with dreams as well, is Kim having you, write the letter to your subconscious, kind of request information.
Yep.
And then the next morning, after you've written down whatever, people can go. We'll tag out Kim too, so people can go actually do more research with her. But then, are you working with the emotions and then movement, or how are you integrating your dream?
When it comes to the auditions, it's a little gentler approach. It's really me just trying to create awareness of an unconscious, and so that comes through dreams, but it can also just come through patterns that are reemerging. It's just me moving through the world and just trying to be, I started meditating a lot more in the last couple of years, just trying to be much more present in general to what's going on around me and less controlling of my immediate environment. And so in an audition setting, that's just really like making sure that I'm in a quiet place when I'm preparing, and me just trying to figure out what's coming out of this piece that's speaking to a different part of me rather than the part of me that wants to plan the perfect audition. It's like, where am I at right now in my life that this sort of layers over? I wish I could say that it's like comes to me in all these dreams, but I struggle to have very vivid or dreams that I wake up from and can really emotionally connect to. It's more like creating in my daily waking life a ritual of like being in touch with the unconscious, this thing that is constantly going on around me that my whole life I have spent time just like, I don't have no time for it. Like the world is a controlled, malleable place. And that the harder I work, the more successful I will become at the thing that I want to do. It's really just about sort of putting that aside and going, yes, okay, good job. You did the work. What's the other part? Because that's the thing that's going to sustain you. But to be honest, I truly feel like I'm kind of at the begining of that journey. Like, it's brand new for me. I've worked with Kim a few times over the last few years. I did a retreat with her this year. And I have done the most profound work in those rooms doing it. So I know it's the path, but I'm still searching for what it is as it is integrated into sort of a daily routine for myself.
It's such beautiful work. And as an artist, you really have to let go to be able to do it. But I'm so glad you even mentioned that sometimes it's not even in the sleep. You've got young kids. I've got a young kid. The last couple of years, I haven't been dreaming. So sometimes even using my dreams, it might be disjointed. So I think even just the impetus of understanding, being able to give yourself that time and space to do it for 5 or 10 minutes during the day.
I mean, the meditation is by far the most basic way for me. Like doing meditating twice daily is like, it's like just sticking your head down into like under the iceberg. Like if my whole waking life is the tip of the iceberg and I just dunk my head in the water and I look down and I go, oh yeah, that's all there. Look at all that down there. And as you do about 20 minutes, and it kind of calms you down and you remember that there's all that there. And then you come back up and you do all the things that you need to do and change your kid's diaper and make them dinner and all the stuff. And so you're constantly reminding. I have to just do this twice a day to just remind. When you go on retreat or when you really get the time to like go and have an experience where you do 4 or 5 days and you're just like focusing on this stuff, you get to like stay down there. Even if you go do like just one of our workshops for 2 or 3 days, and there are more than, other people who do this dream work too, but to go and spend hours on the mat and really focus it. And like you said, write that letter to the unconscious and welcome something to come out. Then you're down there, you're in your wetsuit and you are like floating down there and you're getting to really explore. And you realize how much interesting, powerful, amazing, vibrant stuff is going on down there. And I don't know about you, but as a dad, I could feel really not vibrant. I feel like I'm just holding on for dear life and surviving. Totally. And what that has taught me is like, you have no end of great stuff going on down there. You just have to be willing to attend to it, to listen, to welcome it, to come up and be in a place where you're ready to receive it.
Again, an open portal to channel. So I feel like as an artist, you sometimes forget that when you step into the business of it. Patrick, I could talk to you for hours about this. Thank you so much. One of the most incredible artists to study in this last year for me because of your recovery process, and even more of the recovery that I wasn't even aware of that I got to hear. Because I feel like lately I've been really focusing on that element of like, this career finding relief in it, finding relief in being able to channel, finding relief in being able to be an artist, finding relief in the quiet, finding when you're not doing anything, the responsibility, not having it be this dream that everybody that's listening right now, I want to be an actor. I want this. I want to be a series regular. I want this responsibility. But they're thinking of it as a dream, something that's far outside of them. But what happens when you actually earn that responsibility? And then it's a responsibility. And then once you finish that responsibility, how do you recover so that you can, again, find that relief and get back in? This is such a beautiful example. Your whole career has been of that, those 3 R's constantly in repetition. And I just want to say, dear God, whatever work you need to do to allow us to see you in a comedy.
I will. I really appreciate that.
Yes, please. I'm just, I told Brandon Kyle Goodman, I was like, you need to write a book. And he wrote a book. So I just love putting things out here on the podcast. So I can't wait to see this mega. I'm
going to call you when it's happening.
Yes, please. All the good things that are coming out your way. So Plan B is also out where people can watch. What a great show as well.
With our dear friend, Josh Close. I loved your interview with Josh. It was so good. Yeah. That was great. That was good to work up in Canada and with, obviously I'm from Canada. I love being able to go up there and champion other people's voices up there. And then I'm shooting another thing in Canada right now. I'm just back in LA for a couple of days, a film called Young Werther with Alison Pill, who I've been dying to work with for a really long time. So she's fantastic. And that's it for now. Trying to develop stuff too. There's a lot of like Canadian. I'm trying to like kind of get back home a lot. There's a part of me right now that's spending a lot of time like interested in telling Canadian stories and getting up there and making the most out of, that part of my life. So that's the focus now. And who knows what's to come. We're in a bit of a strange time, obviously.
We are. Well, then you're going to come out guns and swinging with like a massive comedy. I'm just telling you. My word.
You've planted the seed. It's got to happen.
Did. Patrick, thank you so much. Where can everybody find you? Follow along?
Oh, at Half Adams everywhere. Not as active as I used to be, but I'm on there for sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. A pleasure.